locked up the museum after closing and returned to their accommodation in the basement. As the pair settled down to relax, they heard footsteps in the museum above, and Mr. Jonas went upstairs to check things out. It was then that he saw the man pacing the floor. Assuming the man had somehow gotten locked inside, he approached him and laid a hand on his shoulder, at which point he promptly disappeared. On another occasion, Mr. Jonas was with a colleague, again after the museum was closed, and the apparition made another appearance, this time witnessed by both men. From time to time, news reports surface, but there is no information about who this man might be or why he is hanging around in the museum. Ooh, let me know if you've been to this museum. I've never heard of it. And number 2, Black Sheep Brewery. Centurion's Ghost Ale is certainly not the only ghost which has made itself known in the famous York Brewery. The York Brewery and meeting rooms is a labyrinth of rooms dating back to the 18th century. It has a colourful past, having once been a morgue and then a vicarage before becoming the brewery you see today. Staff often report hearing heavy footsteps and the table having a habit of moving around by themselves. As if that wasn't ghostly enough, a somewhat malevolent spirit stalks the halls. He is tall and thin, wearing a tall hat, and makes it clear that he would rather not welcome anyone into what he sees as his building. He seems to enjoy shouting and slamming doors as he stomps around the property. Ooh, I mean, is that a bit rude? Like, come on now. Number 3, York Minster. I've definitely heard of this. It's actually a really nice looking cathedral. I've never been inside, but if you like that sort of thing, it's nice. As the largest Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe, York Minster is probably one of York's most famous buildings. It is a breathtaking sight to behold, and the current building is believed to date all the way back to 627. What the heck? 627, like there's no 1 in front of that. Do we think that's right? Like, that's crazy. With such a long history behind the building, it is not a great surprise that York Minster is considered to be one of the most haunted places in York. One of the most frequently shared stories of ghostly goings-on is the atmospheric structure dates back to the 1820s, when 2 tour group members were separated from the crowd and found themselves wandering alone through the building. On their wanderings, they encountered a man in a naval uniform. The man approached the ladies and whispered in one of their ears before walking off. The story goes that he was actually the woman's brother, and that they had made a pact that whoever died first had to come and tell the other if there really was an afterlife. After dying at sea, the brother returned to keep his promise to his sister. Oh, that's so sweet. Aside from this tale of a secret sibling pact, another spirit said to haunt the York Minster is a young man believed to be Dean Gale, who died in 1702, aged 26. His ghostly apparition has been reported sitting in the pews and listening to the sermons. But like, oh my god, how like cute is that sibling pact? Like, I would love that to be true. Number 4, the Golden Fleece. The Golden Fleece takes great pride in its reputation as York's most haunted hostelry. Something one bar manager dismissed as nothing but tall tales for the tourists when she was first hired. However, it was not long before she was eating her words. Just some of the things she saw, heard and felt at the Golden Fleece include an apparition moving across the bar before disappearing into the wall, the sound of footsteps, a bunch of keys rattling, and perhaps most chilling of all, an ice-cold hand running up her spine. The bar manager is certainly not the only person to have encountered the ghostly inhabitants of the Golden Fleece. In fact, many guests report seeing a ghostly woman roaming the corridors and staircases in the early morning hours. Investigators believe this is the spirit of Lady Alice Peckett, who was the wife of a former Lord Mayor of York, who lived next door to the Golden Fleece, which was once a coach appears in the bottom bar in a 16th century redcoat carrying a pistol. There are many more ghosts than what we've mentioned above at the Golden Fleece. You'll have to pop in for a drink the next time you're in York. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Number 5, Ye Old Star Inn. One thing that York is certainly not short on is haunted pubs and alehouses. Our tour of the Ghosts of York takes us to one of the most notoriously haunted pubs in York, the Ye Old Star Inn. This old coaching inn dates back to around 1644, although its cellars are thought to be much older. The cellars are the focal point for the hauntings here, as many people have reported hearing the screams of royalist soldiers. Historical records show that the cellars were used as makeshift hospitals for soldiers during the English Civil War. Some of the other paranormal activity linked to the Ye Old Star Inn includes the old lady dressed in black, who is often seen descending the staircase from the upper floors, and 2 ghostly black cats who are seen around the bar. Local legend states that the cats were bricked up inside a pillar between the door and the bar. What the heck? There are many reports of visitors bringing their dogs into the bar, only for them to growl and snarl at the pillar. One dog even managed to knock himself out rushing to the pillar. Poor little thing. The practice of bricking up cats in a building is a superstitious one found all across Yorkshire, which is said to protect a building against both fire and ill luck. Well, coming from a fella Yorkshire girl, I have never heard of that. Maybe that's a North Yorkshire thing. I'm from South Yorkshire. Number 6, the Treasurer's House. The Treasurer's House sets the scene for one of the most famous York ghosts. It is said that back in 1953, a plumber called Harry Martindale was tasked with installing central heating in the cellars of the building. As he worked, he heard the sound of a horn off in the distance. He shrugged it off at first and continued working, but the horn grew louder and louder, as if drawing closer. Then a phantom cart horse suddenly emerged from the cellar wall, followed by an entire legion of Roman soldiers, who he describes as looking like they had been cut off at the knees. It wasn't until some time after this event that he discovered that an old Roman road lies underneath the building, a good 15 inches below the floor, which is why the soldiers had appeared to be on their knees. Since Harry's sighting, numerous others have seen the Roman soldiers, including staff members and other contractors. This location is on the list of the most haunted, if not listed number 1, as the most haunted house in York. Whoa, once again, I've never heard of that, and geez Louise, you see like Roman soldiers, what the heck. Number 7, 35 Stonegate. Over the years, 35 Stonegate has been known as York's most haunted building. It's a building that is soaked in the history and is certainly very atmospheric. The current house was built in 1482, although records show that some former buildings have been on the site for at least 1,000 years. This house is said to have had at least 14 ghosts, but many believe that there are many more. Many became active in the late 90s when the property was heavily renovated, suggesting that the work stirred them up. One of the most documented spirits of 35 Stonegate is known simply as Tom, and he seems to occupy the 2nd floor. Number 8, Black Swan Hotel. The Black Swan Hotel is a historic inn that has been transformed into a boutique hotel. It consists of 3 different buildings: a black and white timber-framed house, a Georgian house, and an Elizabethan house. The Elizabethan part is believed to occupy the site where the historic inn stood for many centuries. Among the notable guests that stayed at the inn was William Wordsworth. The hotel features all the usual amenities that one might expect from a hotel sightings here is of a workman in a bowler hat from the late 19th century, described as a Charlie Chaplin type character. His apparition stands at the bar, tutting and fidgeting as if waiting for someone's arrival. As well as waiting at the bar, he's been seen walking abruptly from room to room, and his presence often fades before your eyes. Another common sighting is of a young woman wearing a long white dress. She likes to stand at the bar in the back whilst gazing at the fireplace. Her apparition can change according to eyewitnesses, with her hair described as both long and glowing, and also black, long, and hiding her face. Would you go to this Black Swan Inn and see if you can find Charlie Chaplin type guy or the woman? And number 10 is Nunnington Hall. Nunnington Hall is a 17th century country house in the village of Nunnington, just north of the city of York. There are countless ghosts said to walk its grand halls, but perhaps most famous of all is a ghost of a Lady Nunnington. Lady Nunnington's dress can be heard dragging up and down the staircase, and always seems to stop the instant she's investigated. Several children's spirits are known to haunt as well. Their disembodied voices are heard throughout, but most often in the attic. Oh, the worst. A dark, shapeless mass has been seen in the panelled room, entering through the wall, slowly moving over to the bed, and out of the room through the window. Yeah, I don't think I'd want to see that. Thank you very much. So those were 10 of some of the most haunted places in York. I actually went to York on my Hindu bachelorette, whatever you want to call it, and they took me on like a ghost tour, but it like we went on a bus and it looked like the night bus from Harry Potter, and it was so good. But the only thing I ever remember from that tour was a pub, that was supposed to be one of the most haunted pubs, I think in the country, maybe not even just York. Yeah, and they said this little boy died, and it was definitely back in the day because they were all off out for the day to go watch someone get like beheaded or hung or something like that. And I think he got trampled on by like some horse carriage or something. But apparently if you go to this pub, you might see it. And we always said we would go back to that pub, and we haven't. It's been like 4 years now. But York is such a lovely place if you've never been. Obviously, anyone that's listening that's not from England, you've probably not been, but there's a famous little street called the Shambles, and it looks kind of like Diagon Alley from Harry Potter too, so it's very old looking, the city. So if you like history, you'd probably like it, and there's loads of ghost stores like everywhere. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you have a creepy rest of your day or evening wherever you are, and I shall see you next time.